guest to come talk to us about the yearbook. Dora gives presentations all over the place, and we're lucky to have her. And so the only thing that I would ask of you is that you just give her your full attention and behave like normal, civilized human beings. All right, Dora?
Okay, so first things when I get to know you all a little bit, you just introduce yourself and your names, and if you have a specific position with this yearbook group, just tell me a little bit about yourself. Start in the round this way.
Okay, I'm Valentina, and I think I am Rachel. I'm working with Tali on putting together the academic travel videos.
I'm Bella, and I'm taking pictures for Ski Week.
I'm Vincent. I'm supposed to be a designer, but I'm only carrying pictures around. So
There's some catch-all
really sure what I am.
I'm Tali, and I'm doing academic travel with Rachel in senior pages.
I'm Lauren, and I'm a photographer.
I'm Tim.
I'm Lan, I'm one of the editors.
I'm Julia, and I'm the other editor.
I'm Phil, and I'm sports editor.
I'm Albert, and I'm the service running editor.
I'm Luna, I'm photographer.
I'm Kate, I'm our editor. I'm Tara, I'm the copy editor.
I'm photographer. I'm Lisa, I'm photographer too.
Okay, great. And then that's why family back there. So you probably don't need to hear them introduce themselves unless they really want to. But that's my dad, John Speechuck, and my mom, Joyce Speechuck, who's a stranger on Speechuck. And you can walk over to them and ask them lots of questions if you want to later.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know what I'm doing. I just carry stuff.
It's like this.
I said lots of time.
He's walking around with this huge bag. It's like this purse. And it looks ridiculous because it's like this guy carrying a purse. So you told me to cover them. You saw this guy walking out with a purse. Okay, so I just wanted to get to know you guys a little bit, and so each of you have a specific role within the group, then photographer, sports editor, whatever it may be. Do you have that assigned to the beginning of the year, or?
Yeah.
Okay. And how are those roles decided?
God. That guy.
With the bola.
Okay. Great, and so quickly, I just want to get to know you a little better. What are some of the things you've been working on this year? Maybe how many of you have been? Do they work with you for several years?
Depending. Depends. Many returners. This is my first year working on the yearbook, and a lot of the staff. There's a lot of turnover because there's not always kids here for more than 1 year. Sometimes just a semester. So there's a lot of things juggling, but we make it work at the end.
So tell me about the yearbook that is you're working on one right now that's going to be released at the end of this school year, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So have you decided on a theme and everything?
Yeah.
Beatles.
The Beatles?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, cool. How is that playing out?
Awesome.
Tight.
Editors, you want to say how we're organizing?
Editors,
Well, we've only made a few of the templates, and we have most of the pictures put together. We're mainly working on the templates right now, so we can just start plugging things in for Christmas time.
Okay. Great. So, yeah, and I've been asking these questions because I just like to get to know what you've been doing a little better. I haven't really, this is one of my first times talking to a yearbook group specifically, so I'm really interested to hear what you guys have been doing. And that's definitely the first time I've heard of a Beatles theme, so great job on that. Now, today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the yearbook as a time capsule, as a historical piece, as well as a piece of journalism. So maybe you guys think of the yearbook as a good way to remember your year, as a good way to remember your friends. But another way that you can think of the yearbook is as a historical document, which might sound kind of boring, but this has translations. Raise your hand if you've ever looked through one of your parents' yearbooks and laughed. I see some raised hands. So what was it that made you laugh in particular?
Their hairs.
Their hairstyles?
Okay, from the ex-girlfriend.
Yes.
They're the best.
And boyfriend.
Okay. So hairstyles, former relationships, anything else? Clothes. So if you look at these yearbooks from the past and you think about what makes you laugh about your parents' yearbooks, maybe you even have looked at your grandparents' yearbooks, lucky to have those, you might laugh even more. Then you see how the yearbook can become this really historical piece that you can look back on from your parents. So a yearbook is a time capsule, and this can be rewarding, and it can also be a little bit embarrassing. So if any of you have seen one of those bad yearbook photos with the crazy hair, I mean, there are worse ones than that. But it's usually interesting. I think everyone can agree that you guys, if you look through your parents' yearbooks, you probably found some interest, whether it's in the hairstyles or in relationships that you can dig out and blackmail your parents with. Whatever it was. So most people, even unsentimental people, will keep their high school yearbooks, look back on them occasionally, so that their kids can look back on them. I mean, raise your hand if you have a stash of yearbooks that you kept. I see some raised hands. I know that my sister loves to flip through her yearbooks. And so when you think about it, these are some of the things that you remember from high school that you're able to look back on as you grow older. So yeah, a yearbook is very valuable in that sense. It's a time capsule. As a member of the yearbook staff, you're in this unique position to decide what your classmates carry with them for the rest of their lives. So you can think about this as a way to have an impact on others. Yearbooks can record stages of development. This is another one of those weird, embarrassing I know, that was so wacky. Yearbooks record periods of time. If you look at these, this is one of those wacky clothes photos.
That's literally
Even if you look at the tablecloth and chairs and yeah, everything's pretty funny there. And although you might get a lot of joy out of looking at bad fashion choices or weird hairstyles, which we talked about so much, that joy is considerable. But another thing that you want to think about is yearbooks making up pieces of historical fabric. So this is an example of a source that you could look at. Okay, this is a time period. So the yearbook can be an important historical document. And the funny thing is that the history of the yearbook itself can be traced in yearbook photos. So does anyone know too much about how the yearbook came about?
No clue.
So this was actually one of the interesting things that I found in research for this presentation. I learned a lot about the history of the yearbook, because when we look at our yearbooks that we have today, we usually don't think a whole lot about, well, I wonder how this came to be. So this is a yearbook photo of George K. Warren, the guy who is credited with inventing the yearbook in some shape or form. So Warren is this American dude who is born in 1832, just 5 years after a French inventor named Joseph Nicephone. Yes, I'm totally guessing on the pronunciation there. And he first uses a primitive camera to capture an image. It takes 8 hours to create the first blurry exposure, and this is what it looks like. So not very close to the photos that we have today. The negative hasn't been invented yet. So if any of you have old cameras with film strips, you've seen negatives. And so the negative hasn't been invented yet, and in his first portrait studio in Lowell, Massachusetts, Warren works with daguerreotypes, which are created by using a process invented by his partner, Louis Daguerre. Daguerreotypists use silver-plated copper sheets and light to capture images directly. I don't know a whole lot about how this process works, but this was how they basically took photos a long time ago. But because there was no negative, then each daguerreotype was unique. You had to use multiple cameras if you wanted to get multiple exact images. So for instance, this is a daguerreotype that he took of his wife, and then here's another example of a daguerreotype. And the invention of the glass plate negative opens up a whole new world to Warren. With a negative, he can easily create copies of an image over and over again. He begins scheming ways to capitalize on this plan, because obviously you have a good idea, you want to make money on it, you want to go out and sell to people. So he hits upon this plan that he'll go and visit colleges, and he'll take pictures of the faculty, the staff, students, campuses, all kinds of pictures. And then he'll go and allow students to select from the images that he's taken and create a custom-made book that reflects their college experience. So, some of the first yearbooks. In those days, each yearbook was unique. So this is an example. You look at the equivalent of retro prom photos of you guys. Probably not too many co-ed colleges those days.
That's the Glee Club.
Yeah. So the yearbooks that you make, obviously everyone has a copy that has the same pictures and stuff, but these ones you would select whatever photos you wanted. You could request pictures of friends, favorite teachers, crushes. Sometimes even you get a picture of the photographer himself, because I guess in those days it was obviously pretty special. So this one, he signed it with "Photographically, I'm yours," and then clever. Yeah, getting a picture of the photographer inside your yearbook is a memory of, wow, I got my photo taken. That was really amazing and awesome in those days, right? Because it was such a new thing. So each yearbook was unique, and like today's yearbooks, they told stories. For example, one of the ones that I came about, George W. McNeil's yearbook, the one who you saw the picture of the photographer that said "photographic yours." So his yearbook tells a story about the Civil War. McNeil attends Rutgers College, Rutgers University, New Jersey, in the late 1850s. This is a picture of him. Oops. And he's fairly well liked. He's a member of a fraternity. He has many friends. He works on the staff at a student magazine. So you probably know people who are equivalent. And one of his friends is named William Brownlee Voorhees. As graduation nears, then the country rolls toward the outbreak of war between the North, where McNeil attends school, and the South, McNeil's home. Anyone know what this war is called? Yeah, Civil War. McNeil is seeing the situation of the time, and he realizes that as this war is approaching between the North and the South, he realizes that it may mean choosing between some of his friends at school, many of whom are Northerners, and his allegiance to his Southern family and homeland. You know, he has friends who are Northerners who would be fighting for the Union, and then he has friends and family at home who would be part of the Confederacy. So in McNeil's yearbook, then McNeil's friend, William Brownlee Voorhees, writes, "My Southern friend, when we have finished our college course and you have gone to your Southern home, remember that you are a citizen of a great republic. As such, be loyal and countenance no schemes of personal or sectional aggrandizement. Tell your friends and neighbors that from your certain knowledge there is a great conservative union-loving people of the North, that they will look upon our country as one country and never will consent to its dissolution. Tell them how Frayling Houston, the president of Rutgers, pleads their rights and teaches his students to uphold the Constitution and its laws." I mean, what do your friends write in your yearbook? I mean, see you next year, have a fun summer, have a nice trip. I mean, compare that to you're a citizen of a great republic, be loyal. I mean, seriously, if any of your friends written something like that. I wish I knew what McNeil thought of this lovely little yearbook inscription. But whatever he thought, he ended up with he went home, he joined the Confederate Cavalry Unit, Terry's Texas Rangers. This is them. Group, and dies in battle on 2064. So here we have this narrative being told through the yearbook. You can see, you see the story of the yearbook itself developing from the photographs, going from daguerreotypes to negatives, being able to make copies, letting the students request to make their own custom yearbook, and then you see the inventor of the yearbook born in the yearbook, and then if you go a little further in McNeil's yearbook, then you see this inscription from Voorhees, and that tells you a story about the Civil War. And you compare this to the inscriptions that your own friends write in your yearbook, and you think, wow, people were really mean back then. So in this way, when you look at a yearbook, and this is obviously from quite a while ago, then you see how it has the potential. Even though McNeil or Voorhees, they might have thought, okay, this is just a book of photos that reflect our college experience, and this is an inscription I wrote to make us consider some of the things that are very important about our country. They probably didn't expect that a couple decades from then, a couple hundred years, then people would be looking at this and thinking, wow, this tells an interesting story. This is a narrative that really helps us see clearly this perspective. So when you look at your own yearbook, you probably don't think this is going to be a very important historical document that people will learn from, that people will look at and draw perspectives from. But it's very important that you think of it that way because it enables you to think, well, maybe I should go a little deeper, maybe I should include some things that possibly my great-great-grandchildren will be interested in seeing. So not only do you want to make it interesting, obviously, for your classmates, for your graduating class, you also want to make it interesting to the people in the future, which is kind of fun to think about. We don't know whether or not our yearbooks, like Big Neil's, will capture some important global conflict or a civil war, hopefully not that. We don't know necessarily whether it will capture such a huge piece of history. Maybe our yearbook will echo a very important event, maybe not. Maybe one of our classmates will be famous. Oops, maybe not. That's actually Ryan's secret. I don't know what grade that's from, but I don't know. Wait, but yeah. So, and the people who were looking at Ryan Seacrest's yearbook in, I don't know, like 4th grade, whatever grade it was, they probably didn't think, wow, this little cute kid in glasses is going to be this really famous person when he grows up. Or maybe they did. I'm not sure if he showed potential at that point, but probably you guys know a little bit more about Ryan Seacrest than I do. But if maybe one of your classmates will be famous, it's something important to think about. Or maybe not. This person, I don't think, became super famous. But what we do know is that we can create a yearbook that captures the present. A yearbook, when you think about it, is a form of journalism. So what do you think of when you think of journalism? First few images or words that come to your mind.
Books.
Books. Magazines.
New York Times.
New York Times. So from what I'm seeing, it's mostly a lot of journalistic works in the form of news, like newspapers, magazines, in the form of printed text and books. So that's really a conventional view of journalism, but I would definitely encourage you to think of your yearbook as journalism as well. Because when you think about it, you're reporting on what has gone on in your school over the past year. You're reporting on some of the people and events. I know that some of you are working on taking photos of the ski trip. You know, these are some of the things that you're reporting on. And if you think of it like you're reporters, you're journalists, then you can really get this in-depth view of what's going on and share that with the yearbook. So tell me about some of the trips you've taken. How are you writing about them or taking pictures and putting it in the yearbook?
Well, like, our school has a week dedicated so that all students go on like different trips with different classes. So pretty much for the yearbook, we just get the pictures that the teachers took of the group on trip and I'm putting those in the book.
Okay, great. So yeah, a very good form of journalism. I know a lot of you are photographers, usually if you're a photographer. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of race hands. So that's again a form of journalism, putting the photographs together to narrate a story. So yeah, really interesting way of showing the news or showing stories. It can be triumphant or embarrassing. Okay, I know I promised I would show embarrassing. All right, I don't even know how to describe that. Moving on. But in order to create a true journalistic time capsule, we saw faster. Avoid focusing only on the amazing, triumphant stuff, like, you know, someone winning a trophy or being on the easels. That's a very important stuff to focus on. But also go undercover, capture all walks of life. So don't focus only on your friends or the most popular kids in school. Try to get everyone and everything. But being a good journalist and a good yearbooker is obviously more than just being equal opportunity. It's also about creating vibrant images and copy, otherwise known as text, that really convey your high school experience and your vivid world. Within TASIS, I know you've been walking around, and you want to make sure that your yearbook really conveys the amazing beauty of this campus, all the great things about TASIS. I mean, how do you get that across through pictures? Would any of you like to tell me about some ways that you've been? Yes?
Well, I was in charge of dorm life section, so I went throughout Monticello snapping pictures of people in their natural habitat.
Okay, how did they like that?
Oh, they loved it.
That's good. I can see where it might be a little embarrassing where someone's like, oh, I haven't cleaned up my room yet. There's, I don't know, stacks of, yeah, but I think that's great. See, that's a really good example of going undercover, capturing all what's taking pictures in the dormitories. You know, a lot of probably, I mean, I know that that might not be something that a lot of people consider because it's obviously taking pictures of beautiful scenery, taking pictures of the buildings, but then actually going inside and getting that snapshot of life is a really good way of doing so. What are some other ways that you try to capture your school and your school's spirit through the yearbook?
Just all the events that happen. Like,
All the cultural events and stuff.
Teams.
Yeah, like sports and like document travel and
Service learning.
service learning groups, you know.
The plays.
Dance.
Okay.
The soon-to-be Christmas dance.
Ooh.
So getting this really wide angle, I guess, on your school, like not just taking pictures of some of the really awesome events, you know, that's a wonderful way of doing it, but then also, you know, doing something like dorm life. I think that's wonderful that you're getting that real balance in there. So today, we're going to do some interactive activities that I thought might be fun just to practice. So one of them is on copy, otherwise known as text, as I mentioned. Writing is more of my area of expertise. I take okay pictures, but you guys are probably much more skilled than I am. So copy should be concise, vivid, and action-packed. Who are the editors mainly in charge of doing writing, or?
We try, one of the philosophies we have actually is to try and get a lot of our copy directly from the people who experience the events.
That's great.
So academic travel, we don't want to write about your trip if we weren't on it.
Yes.
If you have a team, we don't want to write about your team if we're not on the team. So we try and get a lot of our copy directly from the source, so you can think about it as kind of a primary source sort of thing. And we then get it and manipulate it in the ways that you do.
Vivid, yeah. Everybody went over, like, they submit a quote to you, and then you can edit it for concise insert.
Yeah, or you know, writing captions is probably something that's going to be. We haven't quite gotten down to that level yet, so mostly because we're still building pages. But that's definitely something that's in our future.
That's great. Actually, one of the other interactive activities is collaboratively read captions, which I'm looking forward to because I haven't really done that much caption writing. So I thought it would be fun to just, you know, take a few images and just work with you guys on, you know, how what captions should look like. So. Yeah, I think that that's a wonderful idea of getting the text right from the people who experience the events. And for those of you on the yearbook team who have been in those events or who have been on the teams or trips, I think that that's really convenient that you can do, you know, submit the text right directly. So here's a group activity number 1, and it's just kind of, and this could be anything, preferably an event that one of you has been in, maybe a lot of you, because again, if we went that primary source. So we're going to be working on choosing a school event to write about. Step number 1 would be to establish setting, and then also establish. So tell me about one of the most interesting things that has happened recently at TASIS.
Yeah,
I know that